Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Tuesday. It's July the 30th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And what I saw was a big channel working down pretty much all day long. It wasn't real clear that that was the case early on. Early on, it looked more like a trading range. I actually ended up having this moved up here, and this was brought this down to about right here. And you can see it looked like a really tight range there. But we were steadily, if you drew this line off here, you could see we were steadily working off those two lines all the way down, and that's what kept me on the short side here. It was so tempting to go long here, but you had to feel like they were probably going to get through that support area right across there, and you don't know it's going to do this. I was just looking for it to come down and catch this low side of this what I thought was the trend channel, but you can see it broke on through there, pulled back, tested it to the tick almost, and then boom, it was off to the other side, an equal distance to the other side, and actually overshot that. But that's what will happen a lot of times on a big move like that. It's so bearish and it shakes everybody out, and they kind of oversell it, and then you can see we've been rallying ever since, and that's pretty typical of what you'll see when something like that happens. So, but let's talk about the trades. I'll show you what I saw, but when I started off this morning, I had this, I think, well, I originally had it here, but as we made these higher lows, I slowly moved it up, and we had it in here. But starting off, you had this little channel. I worked that off the lows, and it seems to fit, and then we had the break and the new high, and then we started selling off after that. But it looked really at that point, this looked more like a trading range, and I was kind of treating it like that. The main reason I like this for a long is there's a failed second entry short, and we had this little channel working up. You figured there's going to be a retest. I thought we'd go a little higher than that, but it was enough to get the scalp. So that was my first long, and then I didn't see anything I liked in here. I didn't like going long at that point. Down here, we did have a little failed break lower. Then we had a little higher low, and this is sitting right along there about now. And you can see that's a little failed break lower, a pull back to retest it, and a second entry long there counting off this low. And then you're figuring, hey, we're going back to the high side of the range. You didn't really have this, you may not have had this in place yet. Then we had a little failed second entry short here, and I really thought we'd make a new high again, but it's enough to get the scalp. I had to ride this pull back out, and when it came back up the next time, it touched my limit order and I got out. So it never ticked through. It only got 4 ticks. So depending on how quick you were getting your order in, you may have gotten trapped on that. And when this turned back down like this, if you weren't out, that's not a good sign at all. I probably would have exited with what it would give me and waited for another entry. But I was lucky enough to get out of this with a limit order, even though it didn't tick through. But it had to touch it 1, 2, 3 times before I was able to get it. But as soon as it came back this next time, instantly, as soon as it touched it, I was out. And I believe that's one of the benefits of using you'll hear me say this, is using those automated strategies, because as soon as my order entry went in here or was triggered to put me in this trade, my exit orders automatically dropped 4 ticks away. And what I've gotten out anyway, even if I'd have done it manually, it's hard to say. But I do know that I get out of these trades a lot of times without it ticking through. But I think it's because I'm quick to get in the to get my order in the queue before other traders do the same, and it seems to help. But now we got a failed second entry long here. I was tempted to go long here again, but when all we had were these dojis, I just sat tight, and I did draw my line off those highs. And when we turned down right there to the tick, this is one I used a limit order on. I dropped it as soon as it triggered. I dropped it right there at the end, because you might have gotten filled 1 tick in, I don't know, but I just dropped mine at the end. Really, I wouldn't have been afraid to use a stop order there, because it is a trap. And the lows are down here, so there's plenty of room, you can see, to scalp out. And because they had everybody trapped long, this was an easy move, and you can see that. And somebody asked me about traps to define that, But what happens is you get a lot of people that get, well, this thing trending upwards here, you get all these people that think the market's going higher here, and they get on long, and they start placing their stops below, you know, these bars here. And so there's a lot of stops that pile up for all these longs. And when it turns down, it hits those stops and it accelerates it in the other direction. So your idea is to put your short order in there with them, and you use that momentum to get you a quick, easy scalp and maybe more. Like down here, this time you would have got a whole lot more. So you don't know. They're almost always good for an easy scalp, and they're quick and real fast because it surges from that order, from hitting all those stops. And so that's what a trap is basically. It's a place where a lot of people get fooled into going long. And I wanted to go long here, but I remembered yesterday the same kind of setup. It's the same thing here. There's this one is exactly like yesterday. There's a failed second entry short that makes me want to go long. But with that trend line coming down through there and the fact that we're working lower, I said, hey, it didn't work yesterday. They fooled everybody. And so I figured I'll get fooled today and it'll probably work. But I didn't take it because, I'd rather miss a trade than be on the wrong side. And sure enough, but it looks like they didn't fool as many people today because it took a little while to work on down. It didn't. This one is obvious it worked because you see how fast it surged downward. And where does it find support? Right along that lower line. And that was the clue that I didn't really want to be going long in here because we had not yet gotten back down. That you see we came off the top. It's obvious this is a channel by now. If you don't see this channel by the time you're here, you've got some problems. You need to work on finding your trend lines and drawing your trend lines. And generally they out. But that's the idea with traps. But this was exactly almost like the one we had yesterday. And you can see it didn't fool as many people today because it didn't shoot down. This is an obvious sign that there was a great trap and there were a lot of people trapped to the long side because it surges in the other direction real fast. And you see it took a little while. You had to work it a little lower before you finally people started to give up. And there's a lot of buying pressure in here too because people, most people probably thought we were going to work higher out of this trading range because we traded up into it, and that's generally what will happen. And this is one of those cases where that's not what happened. We continue to work lower. It's really not a trading range. Even though there's strong support here, you can see the resistance is working down off a trend line. And generally what I'll do is I'll use the first couple of swings, and that's what we did here. And you might have started out with this swing, but you had to move it up when this one formed. And you just keep drawing those lines and then all of a sudden you'll notice that one will start to hold and you'll get multiple touches off of it. And then you got it right, and all you got to do is copy it and find the other side. And when we went on through here, then you just measure that distance and drop it down there, a measured distance, and you can see then you find support again, and then you're headed back in the other direction. So I've been getting a lot of questions on that lately, so I thought I would throw it in there. But yeah, I like this. Looking back at this long now, I probably wouldn't have taken it if I'd known this was going to happen, but it worked out. And then we had the trap, and we bounced off this low side. And because it did look a lot like a trading range, you could trade the trading range rules here, and that's a failed break lower. It's a failed, but the main reason I like this one is a failed second entry short. And you can see it really had to struggle to work up there, but it worked, and those trades almost always work. It's very rare that that those a failed second entry that turns into a trap doesn't at least get a scalp. And this one right here, I believe, even if you'd have used a limit order and dropped it a tick in 85, 75, yep, you see it would have worked then, and it got just enough to get that a scalp by using the limit order, maybe a tick in, and that's what I would always do if I liked it with those dojis there. And so if you took that advice, you probably still got a scalp there. And the thing to know is once it got up here and turned back down and closed down here, when it started bouncing a little bit more again, and by this time you got 4 touches off that line, you probably should have just exited. And it gave you a chance to do that with easily getting out at break even and probably getting out with a tick, maybe 2. So or just reversing here and going the other way with a trap. But be careful reversing because most people end up just losing money. So, but anyway, there was a short trap here coming off the low side, failed break lower than the last couple of lows there. You can see that, and then it's like a little breakout pullback long as well. But easy scalp, and you know, went a little bit higher, but probably nothing much more than that. And then you get the trap coming. You know, you got trap long again. Not as many people got fooled, I think, today because it didn't surge downward like that. People were still buying. They were still buying this thing. But needless to say, there's a nice short there. It's a nice reversal. There's a failed second entry long there. Notice this move. First entry long, pull back, second entry long, failed second entry long. It's a reversal bar coming off that. So, you know, nice place to go short. It took a little bit to work through there, and you might have gotten shaken out of this one if you did. You know, you'd rather get shaken out with a tick or two than have a losing trade. But if you held on to this one, and the clue here not to be going long was the fact that, notice we haven't made it down here. And this is obviously a channel right here now. And we're probably not going to rally until we touch this side. And guess what? Once they broke it on through there, the buyers gave up and probably turned to sellers and drove it all down again. But there's a second entry short here. This is just a two-legged pull back to the EMA. Look at that big bearish bar. This is one where you want to use a limit order. And you wouldn't have got filled probably till this bar. You might, depending on where if you put it at the bottom or maybe a tick or two in, but you want to make sure you got enough room to get out here. So you got to get back in here a few ticks or either wait on another setup. And it would have worked either way, but this was a chance to put one on and then add another one right here when, you know, when you got a little trap working, and you can tell that's a trap pretty much there too. But another chance to add on, or if you miss this one, it's really a second entry counting off this high, and you're figuring prices are coming down to here. And it may take a little bit to work through here, and you can see it did. It bounced there a little bit, but it comes on down. And even if you'd waited on this bar, you use a limit order, you still have room to get out before you get here. And guess what? It goes on through there, and it comes back and tests it. And so that's a breakout pullback short. It's a retest of that line, and you got to guess that it's probably coming down to here. You don't know that it's going to go that quickly, but man, that was a great trade right there, a great breakout pullback short with a retest of that previous support, and it turned right into resistance. That's a nice bearish reversal bar, and I guarantee they trapped a lot of longs there. Guess what else that is? That's a failed. There's a new high. There's your first entry, pullback second entry. So I guarantee you a lot of people were thinking this was going to be a failed breakout. They got trapped on the long side, and man, that shot it down quick to the other side again. And that was it for the day for me. That was put us into lunchtime. And again, you want to ride this, you want to measure this distance and put your next line down here, and notice it's right off those lows. I measured distance, and when you start to get overlap down here, probably great place to exit. And you could have got maybe another few ticks out of it if you rode it to here, but you're never going to get it all unless you just get lucky. So, you know, if you don't get the last 2 or 3 ticks, it's not that big a deal. If you get the majority of them, you've done good. You've done a good job. So there's probably a long right here. You can see we went into this. You know, they probably trapped some shorts right here. There's a chance to get a long, then another second entry long. Although I don't recommend really buying when you know you got a downtrend, but this is not a strong downtrend until right here, and that's kind of a capitulation kind of move right there. Now let's just look at this trend right up through here. That looks pretty good. Let's see if that fits on the other side. And you can see that fits real nicely. So there's your channel on the way up. We got a break now. We're kind of working on a retest of the high. And sometimes all you'll get is just a retest of the trend line. So that could be it. This was a pretty good move up, so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't try to retest this high. And let's get this line on down through here like it should be. So we'll see what happens, but you know, as long as this trend's going up, you got to be interested in it. But this is somewhat of a trap right here. A couple of different ways. There's a little trading range there with a failed break lower. There's a first entry, a second entry. The trap really triggered there, but that's not a good trap at all with that. But once you get an overshoot or maybe a big move down and you come back to the EMA and you start to get this overlap, that's not a good sign to be going short. You know, generally when you come back, unless you get a trap. Now, if we'd have broke up here on the second entry and then turned down like you did here, but generally that's a sign that there's some strong support there. So after a move like that, it wouldn't surprise you if you don't go back to the other side. So be careful. That's when you got to be careful selling these kind of setups. When you start to see that overlap, a really good pullback is like this. It doesn't hang around there long and it's gone the other direction. I mean, there's not really any to the low side today that set up well. So, but here's one where you on the upper side and you pull back and you get a nice second entry long and you're gone the other direction. Notice how that doesn't hang around there. It traps people on that little break lower and then it reverses. And where here you just kind of get hung up and a lot of overlap. That's not a good sign. That's kind of a temporary acceptance of prices, but prices aren't being rejected off the EMA very strongly, so that's not a good sign. And what they did here, they made it look like it was fixing to come off strongly, and they just tricked everybody. So once you see that overlap, be very leery about going short without a real good trap. So especially with an overshoot. Generally when you get an overshoot, you're going to get a reversal and an equal overshoot on the other side, and you can see that's about what we got so far. See that overshoot, and then you get one about the same size on the other side. And that's pretty much it for today. Pretty good trading day. I got a couple of emails. People said, hey, today wasn't too difficult. So, you know, maybe some of you saw it. And that's another thing, too, is there's often multiple ways to get to the same place. Like, even if you didn't see this channel and you saw this as a trading range, you still could find most of these setups. It still kind of works the same. You may not have found these, but by that time you should have found the channel, because it's real obvious then that we're making lower highs and lower lows, and they're finding resistance and support at the same locations at that angles on the way down. So that should have been a clue right here. You got to be careful going long. And it was tempting to go long on that failed second entry short, but you can see all they did was trap everybody so they could drive it on down. But anyway, where I was going with that is there's oftentimes multiple ways to get there. And if you see this as a trading range and you see that there's a trend line holding support too, then you know that gives these longs a little more value, or shorts up here a little more value, because you got, and not everybody sees it exactly the same, but generally most traders that are experienced with looking at price action are going to see similar, you know, very similar setups, and they're going to see this stuff. So, but when you see it, when you can see a strong horizontal support, resistance right there, along with a trend line that's holding resistance too, that gives that additional value there on that trap, and that's a good reason not to go long right there, because you may get trapped. So keep that in mind. Hope you had a good trading day today, and we'll be back to do it tomorrow. But this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.